Hi, this is Sheila with Conscious Conversation Central, and today is Friday, November the 2nd, 2018, and I'm here with BZ Rieger and Lisa Flamino Rush this evening, and we're going to talk about, well, I love the title on this one. They're not ones and dones.
Okay.
And we, of course, we started talking a little bit about it before we actually started recording, as we normally do. I'm gonna have to figure out a way to stop doing that because we do miss some good stuff sometimes. So BZ, this particular title you were given straight from your source, from you, the larger portion of you. And you want to tell us what your version of they're not ones and dones are?
Well, you mean what we were talking about?
Yeah, what we were talking about.
Well, I think I started playing with that, something that you had mentioned, and I said, well, you can read somewhere that, XY energies are coming in, and so you may feel, really lit up by X. And so I was saying, well, yeah, you could go check. Yep, done. Okay, yeah, and cross that one off the list because I got lit up by X, came by, and whoa, yeah, okay, I'm good. Hey, checked it off. And a bunch of others. So I was playing that. Sometimes you can compare notes with others and say, oh, yeah, whoa, I just talked to 10 people. We all got slammed by X yesterday, and someone else is still saying, well, X is still, you may have checked it off, but X is still here, kind of a thing. And I was saying, yeah, and you can have X on Sunday and then Y comes to play, on Monday, and Tuesday you got X and Y tangoing together, and then on Wednesday A's come around to play again, and it's like, hey, what's the deal here? I'm on X and Y. I should be at the bottom of the list.
Wait a minute.
So my thought to that is that doesn't really work that way. It's
Trouble
not,
with being quantum.
Yeah, it's not one and done. And that's when I was told they're not ones and dones, and that ought to give you something to talk about.
That's right.
Well, yeah, I mean, because I have heard, okay, so yes, I was saying that we're never finished. And you were saying too, that we're eternal. So
well, we're
there's
eternal,
always,
and expansion is eternal because that's synonymous with one and the other. And that was interesting. So you said, well, change is a constant. It's always happening. And I said, yeah. And you phrased it another way too.
Well, actually, I am of the mind that what we actually are, our divinity, what we refer to as divinity, is really, for me, very specifically energy. We are energy, and energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can merely move in and out of form, and it always does move in and out of form. It does not stay stagnant, ever, under any reason, really. It simply always moves in and out of form, and I think that's what we basically are, is energy. And so,
right. And you had said something, and that's something, and that's you can count on, or something like that.
Well, yeah, because actually change is really the only thing you can ever actually count on.
Okay,
is change.
Right. Okay.
Because that is constant.
Yeah. And that's when I said, well, I would add one other thing to that. And that is that's absolutely so. And you're eternal, and you're continually expanding. What you can absolutely always count on is that as you expand, and as that expansion happens within you, you will have a marker, a signifier, which is constant and wholesale across, you know, every indicator of beings, you know, of any shape, size, embodiment, non-embodiment, in all of sources, multiverses. And that is that as you have that expansion, you flow with it. You know, as you get to a place where there's more expansion, because it's eternal, just like you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
You will come to a place where you may notice, you may discuss, you know, maybe sitting on a cloud discussing, you know, the expansion you're going through right this moment. But it's never held in a way that it's done, you know, well, that, you know, again, that's where the X and Y conversation came up. X is finished, or being, you know, kind of a little surprised or maybe a bit chagrined that, you know, what's, you know, like I was playing, well, why is A come around again, you know? Because as you have expansion, you hold it in a way that it is eternal, and that it's all cosmically delicious, even if you could label things, because you're coming from the heart resonance, so the flow of it feels, looks, tastes is different because you're different. That makes sense. So in other words, that's a constant. You as you expand and your expansion gets to a certain place, then you're never holding it. So it's kind of a positive constant and a negative constant, the same how you would look at it. You're never holding it as something that's one and done or bad or whatever. You know, you may experience it in different ways that you could, you know, give a characterization to. And that's actually, well, that's a good point. So that's one of the things that makes it, gives you more ease with it, makes it more seamless in how you're going about creating different things, right? Doing different things, whatever that may be. You know, if you're a linear human on the planet and you're just starting the expansion, you're starting to notice all that kind of stuff, so that you'll move in one way. And if you've, you know, been doing this for a while and you had physical and body ascension, you know, many years ago, and now you're flowing with it, but hey, you're eternal and you keep expanding, and there is that expansion which is eternal. And as these new energies come in, you're not exempt. Because why? Because it's energy, because you're eternal, because you're still expanding. So you just flow with it differently. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm trying to get at something that's big, and I don't think I've explained it very well at all.
Well, we also kind of brushed on the fact that there are beings that in one way or another haven't, like, okay, so I can sit here and say that I know I'm eternal till the cows come home, and really think I mean that, you know, we are all one and all of that, but there's still lots of stuff going on inside, right? There's still lots of programs, and I'm trying to see how.
Because you just gave a tip off to that when you qualified. I think I mean that.
Right. What I guess I'm not saying this about me. I know that. I was trying to. Okay, so I can only speak for myself. I am aware. It has just become so much easier for me knowing that, well, first of all, as an eternal being, this is an eternal process. Therefore, there is, I mean, I knew there was no one time and you're done. First of all, ever since I started this process, even, well, when we were doing a sacred healing space tribe, what was that, 3 years ago now? Yeah, 3 years ago almost. I knew I was finding then that when I thought I had dealt with a specific issue, I would find it hiding behind something else in a slightly different color, shape, or package, but it was the same issue at the very core. And so knowing that those things, you know, that the programming and conditioning are less but still within me, and being open to seeing all of it on all levels, regardless of what presents, for one thing, that relieves a lot of pressure, knowing I'm eternal and I got quite some time to figure it all out. There's no deadline or anything. So, but being willing to look at all of those things, again, that's for me, knowing that it's not a one and done. Not the good stuff, not the bad stuff. None of these things that come up for integration are just one and done.
Right. And so maybe I'll try again here. So with that expansion and that knowing, so you hold it instead of, you know, I think, or I understand, or whatever. And I don't mean you, I just all use, right? You know, it just is so, and you feel it, you walk with it, you create with it. So what you just said there about, you know, looking at something and flowing through it. So when you get to the place, this is the royal you here, when you get to the place where you can look at this and this and this and this and this, and you're holding, flowing that same way, yes, now you're in that expansion that you won't run out of thises. But that's what I'm talking about. So that constant of how you hold that will be the same. Will you have experiences? Will you have flows? Will you have different things that flow and are created in your expansion around that? Yes. But so the constant is that at a certain point you get of expansion that it's locked in. In other words, you can't go backwards from that and go maybe one way in a linear way. You can't go from taking something as an intellectual exercise to really knowing. And so you don't ever go back the other way. But it may take you a bit of time to get there. Time's the wrong thing. It may in your travels and creations with expansion, it's part of the process. So if you come across something and you have said, okay, well, yeah, I know I've really got that about being able to hold something where I have a multi-locational consciousness about it, and yeah, checked it off the list, all set. And then you see something that's like, you know, really bad, you know, on the you know, outrageous scale of badness. Mm-hmm. And you look at it and you go, oh, but that, you know, come on. Well, okay. So this is what I'm saying. It's, you know, because it's not an intellectual exercise to hold things in that flow. It's like, you know, that sense of flow, that sense of awareness and expansion level. When you get there, it's locked in and it doesn't go back unless you happen to go into a process where you intentionally, that's part of your expansion, as a part of an expansion game and experience that you're doing, that you know, strip yourself of everything and you go and you forget. Just, hey, look at that. That's what we did. You know, but at the core, we didn't strip ourselves of that that other absolute, because that's how all of us at various stages are waking up, because we're not missing anything. So some it was not buried much, some it was, like fathoms cubed, squared, and toroidal, deep. Because it's that knowing, it's that nudge, it's that kind of pulse of that knowing that's always pinging you, to wake up.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's that words are terrible. It's that knowing comprehension, totality of the knowing comprehension of that. That's that pulse that's within you.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
That's interesting that you're saying it like that.
Yeah.
As I'm seeing, I feel like I'm seeing that pulse in other things.
Yeah, actually the pulse is all around. And so one of the things that came up when I was a reflection of that pulse. Let's see if I can describe this way it's coming. So a reflection of that pulse may be, so the pulse is that absolute, that knowing, that holding, that flow. Mm-hmm. I'm just using linear words as placeholder, okay? So we know what the pulse is, right? Of that your eternal expansion is eternal, and that's a constant. Once you get to, in theory, or remember, it's the travel trajectory, how you get there is different. But in that pulsing that's happening, there are reflections to that pulse. So the pulse is that flow, that always coming from love is, that's really the true way to describe it. And so that there is no one and done, right? And then you see a reflection of that pulse. It's not a mirror, because a mirror is the opposite reflected back, right? So it's a reflection. In the reflection of that, you might see someone doing something to a child and saying, "Oh, that's horrible. We have to save them." Just for an example, because that's one that comes up a lot. So that's a reflection of the pulse, because in noticing that and then meeting that, and all of the things, depending on how you designed it, unfolds from that, right? You have expansion. You have doings that you do. You may actually, you could be like Craig Sawyer. So there's lots of things that you go and you feel nudged, and you go and you flow and you do. You're not just sitting around looking at this and looking at that and go, "Hey, I got this all handled." This, because you're creator being. So that was an anathema to the truth of who you are. But so in other words, those reflections of those pulses, some feel the pulse and know it. And then they have, from the human brain, the linear brain, they've got to kind of work with it. And that's where a lot of the expansion comes with, because it doesn't compute. On the one hand, that's all of love. And on the one hand, if source is everything, well, that's bad and I'm good. And so, so you hear what I'm saying? This is where the paradox and all those things come from. So that's why, as placeholder words, I'm using that in that pulse that keeps, it's like that little pulse that keeps waking you up. You hear it from the moment that you actually are come into the physical vessel of your mother's womb. That pulse is there. And there are a myriad of reflections to that pulse. And some could be, you know, a gorgeous flower and what that conveys. And some could be this, you know, a horrific thing, whatever it is. The reason that it's a pulse is because in that, in your reaction to it, in your meaning it, in what you behold from that, you behold other things from within you, and the pulse will get louder. Because that's where the expansion comes. That's where the perspective can broaden back and see from a true seeing perspective. Because the linear eyes don't see anything. They interpret the information in the brain, in a part of your brain, right, that brings it forward and ascribes signals to it. It's just signals of something through the different lenses and stuff in your eye. So you're, you know, how much in our languaging and stuff are we, you know, clearly to see clearly, right? Or for those who have eyes to see. So when if you were to look at the third eye, the pineal gland, and which is one of the reasons that it's calcified over, and there's so many things that are done and orchestrated in a deliberate knowing way to do that, is because that's where you can actually see, because that reads energy and everything is energy. And so there's a clarity of the vision of that, and the organic human, which is not the tinkered around with part, can interface with that, and that's where worlds open up. That's where the true seeing. Okay, so I've gone off in the weeds into an even bigger thing, but anyways, that the reason that I wanted to bring that forward is because you could hold it as a tool, right? So as we have expansion and integration, and you know, we're waking up to this thing called expansion and integration, and we're seeing, oh okay, I do hold different perspectives, or my perspective has broadened out a little, or hey, I can have, you know, some dual layers of consciousness where I can see this and that, you know, and or gosh, I'm getting more familiar with, because it keeps presenting, where I have multi-locational consciousness. So because I'm not small, and I'm not just sitting in this chair from this side of this computer screen, I'm actually on the back side of the computer screen, and I'm over here, and I'm over here, I'm underneath, and I'm above, and you know, as just one example. Because things from this side, to use this metaphor, of the computer screen look vastly different from things from this side of the computer screen. Vastly different. In fact, they're not even the same thing. I don't know what this person over here is talking about, because you're nuts. You're lying. It's not so. Right? So that's actually good, you know, because each one, in theory, is giving you accurate data.
Right.
But we're seeing all of it. And so that's what the whole idea of seeing. So when you see from that energetic perspective with your third eye, which gives you multi-locational consciousness, you can, like I said, you can see this object, you know, rectangular thing called a computer, you know, you see it from this way and this way and this way, you know, all the different things. Now and because it's energetic frequency, it, you know, you can feel, you can sense, you can read all, you know, there's lots of different ways you can do it, that you can then get the mass and the structure and all of that around it. So think of the computer and then just replace anything with that. It could be a behavior that you see. It could be another being. It could be a structure. It could be a system. It could be, you know, a chapter in a book, because they're all thought forms.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying, is you'll get to you'll expand, you know, from being little, you'll expand and you'll get to that constant, or you'll remember and you'll get to the constant, or, so there's, depending on your perspective, you will fill in the blank and you'll get to the constant, which then, unless, again, you intentionally choose to remove it again, now you have that, and you then experience your expansion in different ways. But that's, it's kind of like the magic carpet that you ride on as you go through these things. And from my own perspective, it's actually much more wonderful when I began, and since I'm maternal and always in expansion, it's, I can't check that off the list yet. And that always puzzled me anyways, that I would even bother to try. But it makes it more fun, because then as you look at things to expand, or you create things to expand, or you play with that, you can really dive in deep on the different things, because you hold that as the constant. So it's not like false layers or false echoes. I don't know how to describe this. Like if you have the false layers and the false echoes from a linear perspective that we all have, that came in, and some of us have, done various ways of expanding beyond it. They actually set up a distraction and a distortion on a distortion. So we went to a point where we were expanding and letting go of programming, we'll say, right? But the programming created a distortion from the truth of who we are.
Right.
Like we've talked about before. And as you're playing with that, that's actually then created a distortion on a distortion on a distortion, because you were then believing that was your benchmark. That was your truth, so you keep going from there. So what I'm saying is, when you get to, or get back to, however you want to hold it, that constant, right? That absolute of that flow, it's more fun, because you can dive in deep on anything, wildly delicious, or, rough, or whatever it is. And you're not getting lost in distortions that you were not the creator of or set up for, but that kind of got stuck onto things. Does that make sense?
I'm thinking it does, but I want to make sure that I understand that last little bit there. Can you try one more time?
Yeah, I need a new language.
Well, because well, I know it's not. I was trying to see if I could turn around and tell you in my own language to make sure I was getting it.
Well, let me
What you were
take
saying,
it from a different.
and then everything of what you said just went right out.
Huh?
I'm sorry, say that again. I said I was trying to turn around and put it into my own language to make sure I got it. And then everything you said just left.
Right.
And I was like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Could you repeat that?
No, I might try saying it in a different way and doing a better job of it. What I will play with for a moment is what's the significance of that, or what's the payoff, what's because from a linear perspective, right, what's the good, because it removes, well, it's part of the expansion, but it removes a lot of the filters that have kind of glommed on, gotten stuck on us by design, although not by our design, because it's gone out in ways that was.
I'm only getting like every other word you're saying, BZ.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm only getting every other word.
Yeah, that was really bad. Very robo.
Yeah, it was like that. It was, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, my internet has been here at the place where I am not so good, so I'm not sure what to do about that. Is that better?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is now.
Yeah, because I stopped talking about what I was trying to talk about.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was afraid of.
Well, it is important. It is more fun. It's like and these are just linear placeholders. It's like a milestone that we reach. It's like
well, now let me ask you something, because first of all, I think part of the issue, okay, at least for me and what I have witnessed among my observation, and okay, maybe even some judgment or discernment of a few beings in my vicinity. I mean, and this is where I was saying that a being can say or project, proclaim that they are eternal. And so when one grasps what that really actually means, and then be upset by whatever it is that's going on in any direction of anything, starts making me go, huh, wait a minute. A little. I mean, I get it in the physical, but it's like, and maybe it's just a product of this expansion that I've been undergoing.
Well, that's you just gave actually a great description of what I was getting at. That changes everything when you get to that part that's that constant. That doesn't mean that you stop feeling. It doesn't mean that you stop noticing. It doesn't mean that you stop expansion. It doesn't mean that you stop the wrestling with, right?
No, exactly.
But it does mean that you're not.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Unless you decide intentionally to dive into it yourself, right? It doesn't mean you get sucked into the layers that were added on of distraction.
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense. So, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and for me, there's just a lot of layers. There's just layers upon layers upon layers upon layers. So it's never one and done, because it's just too much. It's endless, right? And like you said, if everything is eternal,
yeah,
we have to do something, right?
I could think about a million other things that I would rather be doing.
Yeah, well, because we were kind of talking about that. Like we don't want to, like, oh, the whole idea of, well, for me, I had thought about this. The whole idea of Source just kind of sitting around as a blob going on, I'm everything. Wonderful. It was kind of boring. And to go back there, that doesn't sound like a thrill ride to me, really. I don't know, so obviously, in my opinion, it's all about the experience. It's all about the experience.
Yes.
And in this body, it's about this planet and this body and this experience. Right. So I'm trying to be with every experience as the individual, like really walk this experience, feel every moment of it, because that's the whole point of it. And then simultaneously to know I'm eternal and this isn't all there is. And it's a really fun and exciting game.
And that's
to jump in and swim with both all my feet.
That's that constant.
Oh,
yeah. See, okay. That's why I wanted to see what is the constant. And I think that's the, Okay, for me, that's the meat about this is the one and done. There is a one and done in this for me. There's at least one. And that is get the memo in all of my bodies that I'm eternal. You get that on board, and then it makes everything so much, I mean, and really feel and know that too. But that's the thing there.
Yeah.
Well,
this isn't a guessing game.
If you would start, but that's not starting at the broadest perspective. You are love. That's it. That's the one you get, not the eternity.
Yeah.
The love. You are love.
Okay, I haven't gotten there yet because, as I said, I'm still kind of grappling with. Well, no, wait a minute. Okay, thank you. Yeah, see, that's getting really good. I like that. Okay, so I was getting ready to say that I was still grappling with what I had experienced myself to be.
Oh.
But that actually, it was of love too, because I got that very clearly just now too. Even though, like I said, what I experienced on one level was very horrific and a lot of destruction, there was love there. And it's yeah, okay.
Because love isn't a Valentine's Day card.
No,
or
that's
doing
right.
the right thing. You know, that's linear, la baloney stuff.
Well, that's yes.
It's
you're
a
absolutely
frequency.
Right. Yes, it is a frequency. But it's not the frequency everybody thinks. Or it's not the frequency I thought. Let's just put it that way. It's so much bigger than any kind of romantic love, any kind of parental love, any kind of word, any kind of love that any human being that has ever experienced that they want to attach the word love to. No, that's not even, that pales in comparison to what.
Right.
Yeah. That's why this language really sucks sometimes when we try to explain a lot of this.
Yes, it does. Because the conversation I'm having is a great conversation. But I'm doing a really bad job of putting it out there.
Well, I can feel what you're saying because and I hope that everyone else can too. And perhaps part of that is because of my own expansion that I've experienced over the past, well, really 2 years now. But wow, that there seems to be a lot coming in on this one for some reason that's not coming out, but I'm getting a lot.
That's happening to me a lot lately.
Hence, there are no ones and dones.
Well, I will stand by my statement of for me, there was at least one, and I will call that particular portion of it done, is to really, truly accept and know with all of me that I'm an eternal being. And so I got this. No matter, I can't screw it up. I am energy at my most basic form, and I can neither be created nor destroyed. I will simply move in and out of form. So all the rest of it is gravy. That's the way it feels like to me at this point, as far as that's concerned. So it opens it up, is what I meant, BZ, is it once I realized and really took it within myself that I'm eternal, and and accepted that, and accepted myself on levels I've never done before either. And knowing that I'm willing to look at every single nook and cranny within my being to figure me out finally, after all these years of not really paying attention to myself very much as to who I really was anyway. So for me, that portion felt like, I guess that's what I felt the need to say. That particular, I will stand by that. For me, that portion is made every ounce of all of this much more sublimely delicious, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And standing fully in that the starting point is love will make it even more sublimely delicious. That's, the kind of the expansion there. Well, what I was going to say is that I heard a bunch of people jump in with there were several different seemingly contradictory statements on it. So when you were talking about that, Sheila, you said, well, then someone said, well, if that's the case, then why would we bother to do anything? Because, we already got this and we got to figure it out. Okay, so that was one. Another one was, well, another one from many someone's was, well, this sounds like it, that they, we, us, they, the more expansive, us, we don't have feelings, or don't have, because there's good stuff and bad stuff, and we should be able to see this, and so, that doesn't seem right. And then there were a couple others who was a smaller group who said, oh, wait a minute, I think the light's going on here, where I can see where you were wanting to take us and shine. What's the value in that? What's the payoff? Because it is so much more fun, because it takes those distortions on distortions on distortions away. And I just actually listed a couple of distortions. So that it is more fun.
Well, when I think I raised my hand and said I had an answer for at least one of those, where if we're eternal, then what's the point of all this? Lisa actually said it earlier. The experience is the point of all of this. And that's the other thing. We're so, the programming and conditioning that we have perpetuated against each other, make no mistake. It's not just that they did this to us. We've done it to each other for eons now, and have had us so busy and distracted of other things. Not many of us are actually enjoying this experience, and that's part of the problem.
Right.
That I seek to change. I am changing, actually, for myself. Partly by taking full responsibility, liability, and accountability.
Yeah, because it changes how the flow unfolds. That's the constant I was referring to, that changes how the flow unfolds. Are there upflows and downflows? Are there outflows and inflows? Are there spiky flows and soft fuzzy flows? But the constant of the flow, because of that expansion, because of that, we'll say constant node point expansion of seeing in a multi-locational consciousness way, I mean, it just takes it to a whole supernova's orgasmically delicious, super fantastic thing.
That's when life started to feel fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now we're doing something.
No, exactly correct. I mean,
Did not enjoy being here with that other limited thing. That's had nothing to offer.
Right.
This offers everything.
Right.
Nothing left out.
And that's actually, okay, so that's you could say that's the one of the oxymorons, or the koans, or the cognitive dissonance points, because we expanded to get to the point that said, what you just talked about, Lisa, right? We expanded to get to that point, and that sped up our expansion to get to what the three of us are talking about now, about that constant point. And now we're like, what, does that make sense? So, and actually they seem to be very contradictory of each other.
Right.
That, wait a minute, BC just said we had expansion to get to the point where we said, this is not much fun and pretty, boring. Okay. But that is because before that, well, it was what you do, or I was going to rise, up the golden ladder in that thing that, Lisa described, or I was struggling with it, or I had to be, the good girl or good boy, or wow, I'm so devilishly delicious at what I'm implementing on this one and this one and this one and this one, right? So again, because it's all of us. So wherever we are in those perspectives and perceptions, there are all of us that have, or are, or just expanded from that, or just haven't expanded enough to that yet, of those. So because it's for everyone.
no, exactly. Well, at any rate, I hope that answered that one. Now, there was two other ones that you heard, BZ, and if I can remember either one of them. I have a really good memory, or used to, but it's like a sieve anymore.
Well, the last one was what Lisa and I were just talking about how cosmically delicious and exciting it is, when you're on that point. And it was only a few who kind of had that, or glimpsing it. And and it gets, as you stand more fully in play in that constant, you realize that, I can't even imagine creating a scenario where I'm bored, because there's so much creation going on. I can't even, stay still enough, long enough to, to do that. Does that make sense? Because it's all creation, and there's not judgment to it. And the middle one that I referenced, a number of someone's had said, well, then they're not feeling, they don't have any feelings, or we get to that point where like somehow we're the gods, like if you look at a lot of things, well, the gods came down, they just toyed with the humans, and well, actually, yeah, they did, but toyed with the humans, and they don't have they don't have feelings and that kind of stuff, because
empathy.
So somehow the implication in the questioning of that was that by expansion you're removing yourself from feelings and all that kind of stuff, and so you just, so is that the one you were talking about?
Yes, actually, and I'm glad that you brought it up, because that's actually that's a, for me what that is a very limited perspective of viewing. It's a very limited viewpoint, and I get it. I do. I get it. I get it partly because I was sharing with Lisa before we began this evening part of that experience that I've had recently, when in the sharing, even just of that experience, in trying to communicate with Lisa or anyone really that I've shared it with, I became very aware that I am describing it from my little human linear perspective as I was experiencing that. But I did also experience what it was like to be that. And there was no malice or evil involved in that being at that point. And so what I witnessed, and again, from this perspective, this linear, mostly still, little person perspective, this little human perspective, that being could have been labeled as unfeeling, uncaring, destructive, evil even. And yet I felt none of that from that. I keep saying that being, it was me. I was that being, is what I'm saying. So I'm not sure how it's like that's a, I think that's it's always going to be in the view, the eye, or the feels of the beholder of how that is experienced. It can never be judged from an expanded thing. The idea of having no feeling is always going to be from a
limited perspective.
Right, a limited perspective.
Yes.
And that's, it's not saying that that's right or wrong. That's the way I view that.
Yeah, because if we think about, part of what when I heard that, it conjured up may have been old echoes of old similar kind of thoughts or feelings within me that I can joyfully say I have not had in decades, is a judgment, absolutely, and fear in that, and of somehow having to get mine, or and of course the get mine is also convoluted with all sorts of distortions of the truth of who I am, because of not being loved, or not worthy, or all those different things that kind of show themselves in different ways. Because what it speaks to is the non-feeling, speaks to that a judgment on the dramatic nature of the way one presents something, yet there's love, which is this absolute that flows through everything and all of those things. And it's a pretty vibrant frequency. Okay, it's not pretty, it's a vibrant frequency. It's an all-encompassing frequency with every color and every sound and every frequency of what we might term as musical notes. So it has all of that. It has all that richness and complexity and breadth and depth and volume to it. All those ways that we use as linear things to describe something that has richness and character and all those kinds of flavors and all those kinds of things.
Right, but within that, and this is why I think the original question may have arisen that you heard. And that is, again, that definition, that human, little, limited definition of the word love.
Yes.
And how that is held. Because the question or the comment that you heard swirled around, if I understood properly, in regards to, there's, evil or this bad thing happening, let's say, to a child or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And how can that be of love, right? Because that's kind of what we were talking about there, right? And yet it is, and that's where you were talking about the unfeeling portion as one becomes expanded. Am I
Yeah.
right? Okay, I wanted to make sure. Okay, because this for me plays into the exact same kind of thing about choices and the fact that there is nothing left out of anyone. And again, I know this all boils down to what each being personally believes about themselves and life in general, I would imagine. So, but for me, from my perspective, from where I sit at this point, regardless of who and what we're talking about, and BZU and Lisa are the two biggest ones that helped me see this for myself. Helped me see it. I saw it, but you helped me see it. And that is that there is nothing left out in any of us. And we set up certain things before we ever enter into this particular incarnation. And now I have two different folks in my field who have experienced the beings coming to them and saying, hey, will you be my parent this go round? So I cannot dismiss that as a truth for me. I've always felt it was true. I always knew it was true. And then I had Lisa come along and tell me that this is how her child came into her life. And then after I heard her story, I hear the same story from my son, that is how his daughter came in. So I have to say, okay, well, apparently we do set things up, and because we want to experience things a particular kind of way. So back to the child who's been hurt. I'm
going to stop you for a second, because that's that pulsing that I was talking about. Right. And then the reflections on the pulse that show us in what you're about to say, that'd be one of those reflections. That's how I got into that.
Yeah, no, I agree. So the same kind of thing. Now there's a child who, and that does not change my personal feelings about, do I want to see that happen? No. Will I do everything I could in my power to see to that it would stop and not happen? Of course I would, if I had the ability. Absolutely.
Right.
Without question.
Great. I'm glad you, and I want to mark that right there. So, because I would absolutely concur with that, and take it further than you had a chance to, or may have, whatever, but what we're speaking about is the truth of who we are. And what we're speaking about is getting, linear placeholder word here, a handle on what in the heck is happening, and am I going through and experiencing and seeing. And whether it's, our response, our physiological or other responses from our other bodies that are going on to what's occurring in the wholesale physiological changes of the embodiment of all the totality of us coming into this physical vessel. Hence, the physical vessel must completely change. Completely. Whatever you need to do to understand, from the C to the E, the completely, on that, someone, a friend texted me, she texted me a couple days ago and said, "What is going on with these energies?" And I wrote back with a chuckle and I said, "You're feeling Gaia's heartbeat." She said, "My heart is racing." And I said, "You're feeling Gaia's heartbeat." You and all others, if they hadn't been aware of it before, that they're feeling that syncopation, that resonance of their DNA in the grids that have their resonance to that which is in Gaia. That's how you can be grid workers, and each of us are. Some of us do a good job of it, even though we have no idea what you don't need to go stand in the line and wear the grid worker t-shirt. Now some do, and cool, but it doesn't change. You're not, you're not in you're not MIA from your grid worker duty because you're on the planet. So anyway, so I described that and she was like, "Huh, okay." And I said a little bit more. She said, "Oh yeah, wow, okay." Then I heard from her today, and she said, "This, spiritual expansion, how'd she phrase this? Like, it's rough on the body or something." And I laughed and I chuckled, and then I wrote her back and said, "Yeah, on everybody." And then I get, the list was really long, and I said, and ... and there's a bunch of others that, because I was on etheric and auric and so on and so forth. And I said, that's what's changing, because in order for all of that to come in, it has to rearrange all the stuff, because all the stuff that's here is linear stuff. We're not in linear anymore. We haven't been for a long time. And we need to make room for all of that. So you could think of it as, okay, so I've got this turtleneck on, and all the fibers that make up it, that give it this color, and there's a length of material that comes up to give it a collar, all those kinds of things. So you can think of that. You can see it, what a turtleneck is, right? But all of the has to be rewoven to accommodate it's energy, but to accommodate the form that energy takes, the vibrancy that energy now takes. So, for example, if the energy coming in was all, let's say, all liquid, right? Then this is fiber. So if this wasn't water resistant fiber, all the liquid would be pouring out all over the place. So you can see how, in that analogy, you would need to change, right, the mechanics of that.
Right.
Or if it's all molten, flames, right, then unless you've rewoven the material, it's all gonna be incendiary and disappear. So those are, kind of silly examples, but they do make the point that everything needs to change. And
right.
That's not even, okay, that was woefully inaccurate, but it's a good placeholder. So now also the intrinsicness of your body that has been there all along, because remember, you're not missing anything when you got here, right, is Aren't there like those toys that are transformers, or you got the glove mitten or mitten glove or whatever it's called? You can pull the flap and it's gloves or it's mittens, or the transformer is a guy walking along and then he's a, I don't know, Tyrannosaurus Rex or something like that, you know? Because you do, oh, your kid just goes, oh yeah, you just do that.
Yeah, something
like,
similar.
huh?
Yeah, something similar.
Yeah.
Optimus Prime, actually. Let's get it straight.
So, you know, that's what we're all doing. So those original organic human parts within us are doing their transformer thing. And as we do that, and we're creating a whole new being. And we haven't talked about this recently, but we've talked about this a lot, a year ago for a while. And so that trinity of that connection between just you and the shirt here, the small, you know, Eeyore-esque being, you know, and then all of you coming in, and then when you meet the organic human, and it's a whole new life form, because it's that physical embodiment where it's not this one and this one that just kind of mushed together. They did, but in that, you know, meeting, in that implosion, there was the creation of this new thing. So anyways, that's what we're doing. And so if you've got bits and pieces of, maybe you got all your shirt off and you checked that off on the thing, but you didn't notice here's a big patch of this fabric right over here that was porous fabric. And so all of a sudden you're looking, going, well, where's that flood of water coming, right? Because, so that's why this checking it off the list doesn't work, because it's an eternal thing. We're always expanding. We're not going to get to be, you know, this level and then, okay, we're done, because we keep creating the levels.
Well, there's another reason for that too, I think, in my mind anyway, and I could be completely wrong, so just for me, but well, because, you know, there was this thought out there, or proclivity to perpetuate the thought, that, you know, we're going to ascend. It sounds like a one-time deal, you know, sort of like well, Christ only ascended once, you know, hey, it's a one-time deal, one and done, sort of what people think.
Yeah, and
right?
actually what popped up when you were saying that came to mind is that, and I think the majority of people who talk about it, I think, have expanded beyond that. I could be wrong, but it was, we're going to get the hell out of here and we're going to ascend where it's all fluffy bunnies, and I'm going to kick back on a, you know, a multicolored chaise lounge, and someone's going to bring me drinks because the roads are paved with gold, and yada, 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 yada.
Well, see, there's still, I hate to break it to you, but there's still a whole lot of folks thinking that same thing, you know. At least that's what I see and feel, that, you know, if we just have this or that or the other, then, you know, we're done, we're outie, it's all good. And I mean, it is all good in my view, but that's because I know I'm ready to just enjoy the experience no matter what, and I'm going to create the most fantabulous experience that I am capable of in every moment of now. So but
right. So I'm going to jump in with answering to someone shouting from the other side of the, I don't know where they came from, but you know, like the barricades. It's not settling. It's not settling. It's not in any way, shape, or form settling. In fact,
nope.
It is so far an anathema to settling, I don't even know how to describe it. So,
Oh, wait a minute. You're saying somebody screamed that we're settling? Oh, my goodness. Well, that's a perspective. That is a valid perspective, I suppose. Not mine. I certainly don't hold that as my perspective. But
that's one of those things that's an oxymoron. Okay, maybe like it's a double or multi-sided. So on the one hand, when you have the perspective and you're hearing a conversation like this and that particular point of a conversation like this, and you say that's settling, right? This is where this is akin to what Lisa was talking about before of, creating something that's just this small thing and it's kind of boring and I'm not going to do that anymore. It's the same thing. That's an expansion point that then triggers you to expand more, to come around to an expansion neighborhood that Sheila's playing in, where there's absolutely no settling at all. So that's a really good kind of description, those different ones that, they're all, not only what I keep saying, that they're all beautiful perspectives because they're belong to and carried in that moment by each being, and it's so rich and so delicious, and other ways to play and avenues to go down. You can pick this one and this one and this one and this one, and put it all together and you go play, and it's like another one of Mr. Potato Head, got all the different hats and this, that, right? And it's that expansion of, okay, now you flow down the expansion path, and what Sheila was talking about, where she said, I think there's a number of folks who still hold that area, and I see it totally different, because my perspective is that there's expansion and abundance is so different than that. Does that make sense?
well, kind of. It was a little broken up because of the robo, but
it wasn't as bad. We could kind of track it. That's all right.
Yeah. Can you repeat it? Let's see if we can get it without the robo.
Yeah.
I mean, I know.
Well, no, it's interesting because what I'm realizing is that this is actually a really essential ingredient to people, for people, if they choose to put into their batch of cookies for understanding things. On the whole flow of expansion, on the whole flow of ascension, on the whole flow of getting the hell out of here, on the whole flow of creating where I'm getting the hell out of here too, kind of a thing. So I think part of me, okay, a very small part of me, obviously, part of me was thinking, well, yeah, I know that you were mentioning that you were noticing people doing that, about one and done, checked it all off the list. Okay. But I can, it's come around so that's right in front of me now, that this is a really essential ingredient to be able to choose from off your pantry shelf of ingredients, because it changes everything. And it makes everything so much more delicious.
Now the ingredient that you're speaking of is what again? Because I want to make sure I understand. I think I do, but.
Well, the ingredient is, is this kind of the overall thing we're talking about tonight, is this constant of being able to flow with, what's going on, instead of just having the the limited perspective.
Right.
But the most important aspect, I think, for many of this ingredient is that it stops the world of hurt that so many people feel that they are seeing or encountering, or it stops that, because it breaks it apart, and you realize it was kind of like a clay facade that was sculpted in a way to represent something, and it's not there at all, so I don't know why this came to you, but you have this clay facade of this this poor little waif, downtrodden girl, and clothes are torn, and people have done her wrong and all that kind of stuff, and that's the facade, and many are not seeing that, but they're viewing it from many filtered eyes to see that. And what's really in there is this kick-ass, gorgeous, because we're talking about a girl, so kick-ass, gorgeous little girl who is vibrant and strong and so tenacious and vivacious and sweet and clever that you just look at her and go, well, that kid's got spark, and that's the difference. So I would say that would be one of, for many, a really delicious aspect of this ingredient, is that it stops that hurt from our perspective. How we were holding things that we're perceiving as hurting, me, or hurting this or hurting that.
But yeah, because it's coming from that limited perspective still, and in a manner of speaking. Because if you're, that we've allowed ourselves to be convinced that we only get this one time and this one chance to have an experience and hopefully get it right. And that's a shit ton of pressure and not real whatsoever at all. And which brings in all the other things that have been, that we've allowed, the distractions and all of that, trying to hurry up and get those experiences now before the time runs out. Because so yeah, I don't know. I feel like first of all, that's why I feel like the biggest thing for me to realize was that this is an eternal thing, and that takes a lot of pressure off. First of all, for me, it took a lot of pressure off. That knowledge. Oh, wait a minute. I don't have to give this. I don't have this teeny tiny time they told me I had to get this right. There's really not a big test at the end of this gig. Oh, okay. Okay, I got a second. Let's take a breather. That was quite delicious, especially when you start figuring stuff out at 56 years old. Because you're pretty much close to the end of the line at that point, if that's what you really believe.
Right. Well, and time is a false construct. It doesn't, it exists
right
here because of the density and the linear nature of it, and because it was part of the false construct that was, was woven in all the threads that created this tapestry of this collective reality here. But if you were to hold the same, well, hey, you can. I was going to say, if you were to hold the same being and have them in their expanded state, and since you're multidimensional, you can do that. What's 50 years, quote unquote, years here is just depending again on the vibrational rate and all that kind of, so you can't slot it, but you could say it's akin to 5 minutes, or we kind of do something like that. Not sure what the reasoning behind that is from the false construct purpose, but with dogs, there's dog years. A dog is, for every year that a dog is, I think it's 7 years. And
yeah, it's supposed to be 7 years of an adult's life or something. I don't know I don't get that either.
So we already, we say, oh, well, my dog is X, or it lets us look at things, or actually what it does is when they get older, we think, oh, well, my dog's 12 and that's 7. So 7 to, oh my God, my dog's really old. and now we've just projected a whole shit ton of stuff on that poor dog.
Exactly, right?
So I just chuckle because I've had experiences where people have said, well, my dog's acting kind of young now.
I could not hear a word you just said because your voice got really, really low.
I was just saying, I'm chuckling because I had experiences where someone said, well, the dog's acting really young now, and so playful. And I remember cocking my head, looking, going, and this is a bad thing. Why? Given that the dog in question is an older dog, 7 years and all that multiplied by.
Right.
And, and the chuckle was because they realized the inanity of what they had just said. So we do that a lot with, again, that's our different perspectives of things that go on, and we can sometimes catch ourselves as what we just said is, oh, we can see, we can actually, it's a perception and a perspective illuminator or delineator, or lets us see, well, wow, that's the way I looked at it. Oh, that's kind of, because we're in that moment can have multi-locational or at least bilocational consciousness about that. It may only happen for a nanosecond, but it occurs.
Yeah.
And that goes back to that pulsing of that constant, because we're not missing anything. And so that is always there for us in various ways. And, right now you might be able to describe it. It might be going like, like this. There's, this pulsing is all over, because now would be a really good time to wake up.
Yeah, the pulsing, the pounding, the banging.
The banging.
Yes, the banging. I don't know.
It's intense.
Yeah. So, well, this really is a huge conversation. I mean, one that could be talked about, I'm sure, for eons of time, actually, because there's lots of different perspectives on it. But it really isn't just it feels to me anything really, except for, like I said, the one thing that I feel was very helpful for me, that well, there's two things: the knowledge that I'm eternal, and the holding everything open for review in my mind, in my heart, in my being, in all of my fields, every single, all of it open for review. And I mean, even things that I think I have a knowing of, if something comes up to tweak that, I want to look at it, because, everything changes.
Well, yeah, there's
I might know it now, but if it,
there's the case of, oh, I didn't see that coming.
right, exactly, right. So, by holding everything in an open. Well, again, for me, I feel like anytime I'm even just the slightest little curve could come back and smack me right in the face. So I'd rather just have it completely open, so there's nothing to get caught.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's part of the game. I mean, that's part of creation in playing that, because well, you know, this goes on to a whole nother thing, but in that non-attachment, worlds open up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they do. Sometimes not as fast as some may like, talking about myself, but you know, they do. Well, do either one of you have anything you'd like to add to this particular energetic envelope?
Thank you.
This has been a really good one,
It was
BZ.
quite enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. I don't know why, but I was beckoned earlier on when you mentioned information in regards to our eyes and how we see. I wrote down Holographic Universe. This is a series of videos that I'd seen some time ago. And I'm going to link in the, I'm going to see if I can find them. And if I can, if they're still out there, I'll link those in the body of this video, because
Cool.
Yeah, well, because it actually went into great detail as to how our linear eyes see. And I was beckoning. I mean, I wrote it right underneath the title, so I think that I'm supposed to. If I can find it, I will do that.
Well, that would be important. I mean, that
So,
would be a whole.
well, awesome. They're all the usual things in all the usual places. Thank you both. Say that again?
Yeah, what?
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. Okay, you're frozen. Okay, I'm a little confused. I think we just had a little time slip. Okay, so say bye bye, BZ.
Oh,